Imagine waking up one day, not in your bed, not in your room, but standing on a floating island of dirt in the middle of an endless, starlit void. You aren't alone. 1 billion humans have been snatched from Earth, stripped of their past lives, and forced into a brutal, unforgiving death game known only as the Aegis Trial. The rules are sickeningly simple. You are now a lord. You have a crystal core to protect. You have a summoning altar. And in exactly 2 hours, a bloodthirsty horde of monsters will materialize and try to rip you limb from limb. If your core shatters, you die. If you survive, you get stronger. Welcome to Fate Library, where today we are diving into a brand new, completely original story. About a lord who didn't summon an army of thousands to survive. He summoned gods. Our protagonist, Kael***, blinks against the harsh, otherworldly light. A translucent blue screen hovers inches from his face, displaying a ticking countdown timer. Time until Wave 1. 0, 1, 59, 59. Around him, a barren patch of cracked earth extends for about 100 square meters. In the direct center floats a glowing blue crystal, his lord core. To his right sits a crumbling, moss-covered stone archway, his summoning altar. Panic begins to set in, but Kael** is the kind of guy who thrives when the pressure is on. He doesn't scream, he doesn't cry. He immediately opens the global chat interface that's blinking wildly in the corner of his vision. The chat is moving at light speed. Where are we? Help! I just used my summoning altar. I got 3 orc warriors. They look terrifying. Ha, my altar glowed purple. I pulled an A-rank unit, a pair of elven rangers. I'm going to survive this easily. Kael quickly pieces together the mechanics. Every lord gets 1 free initial summon to defend their core against the first wave. The rarity of the summon dictates your early survival. C rank gets you standard soldiers. A rank gets you magical beings. S rank, you're basically set for the first month. Taking a deep breath, Kael** steps up to his crumbling stone altar. He places his hand on the cold stone. System, he says, his voice steady, activate initial summon. The altar hums. A blinding light erupts from the stone, shooting into the sky. Kael***'s heart hammers in his chest. Will it be a dragon, a legion of undead, a squad of heavily armored knights? The light fades, the smoke clears. And standing on the altar is an old man. He's wearing a tattered potato sack. He looks like he hasn't eaten a solid meal in a decade. He is holding a wooden stick, not a staff, literally just a stick. He probably found on the ground, and he is currently coughing violently. Kael** just stares. He blinks once. Twice. A system prompt dings cheerfully. Congratulations, you have summoned an F-rank unit, Wandering Zealot. Unit stats, Strength 1, Agility 1, Intelligence 2. Combat ability, none. Special skill, Prey. Kael** rubs his temples. An F-rank, the absolute bottom of the barrel. The global chat is currently full of people bragging about their armored minotaurs and dual-wielding assassins. And Kael has an asthmatic grandpa whose only ability is closing his eyes and hoping for the best. My lord, the zealot croaks, his voice cracking. He drops to his frail knees and bows, almost falling over in the process. I am at your service. Though my bones are weak, my faith is strong. Great, Kael** sighs. Can your faith stop a goblin's rusty sword? The zealot looks up, blinking slowly. If the heavens will it, my lord. So no, we are entirely screwed. Kael** slumps against his lord core, watching the timer tick down. Time until Wave 1. 0, 0, 45, 0, 0. If he sends this old man out to fight, he'll die of a heart attack before the enemy even swings a weapon. Kael** opens his status screen, looking for any loophole, any hidden item he might have missed. Lord name, Kael, territory level, 1 population, 110 unique trait, unlocked. Kael** pauses. His eyes lock onto the last line. Unique trait, he clicks on it, and a massive, blinding golden panel overrides his standard blue interface. Unique trait, the architect of the Pantheon, mythic rank. Description. While other lords rely on the quantity of their armies, you command the quality of the heavens. Your units possess the Divine Ascension Protocol. By absorbing the soul essence of defeated enemies, your units do not just level up. They evolve, breaking the mortal limits and ascending to godhood. Evolution requires 0-10 soul fragments. Kael *** reads it 3 times. His breath catches in his throat. This wasn't a standard evolution system where a goblin turns into a hobgoblin. This was Ascension. He looks over at the frail old zealot who is currently sitting in the dirt. Clutching his wooden stick and praying silently. "Hey," Kael ** calls out. "What exactly are you praying to?" The zealot opens one milky eye. "To the heavens, my lord, for strength, for salvation." Kael ** smirks, a dangerous, calculated glint in his eye. "Forget the heavens, old man. From now on, you pray to me. Because I'm going to turn you into a god." The timer hits the 10-minute mark. The sky above Kael **'s island abruptly shifts from a starry void to a blood-red canopy. A heavy, suffocating pressure descends on the territory. In the global chat, the boasting has stopped. It has been replaced by sheer, unadulterated panic. "They're here, the portals are opening. Help, my core is cracking, help me." Then silence from those users. Their icons gray out, they are dead. The Aegis trial isn't a game. It is an active slaughterhouse. On the edge of Kael **'s small island, a tear in reality rips open. Foul, rotting air spills out, followed by the guttural shrieks of monsters. Wave 1 commencing. Enemy type, feral goblins. Quantity, 20. 20, for a lord with a squad of knights. 20 goblins is a warm-up. For a lord with one asthmatic old man. 20 goblins is an execution. They pour out of the portal, spotting the glowing blue lord core and the 2 humans. "My lord," the zealot says, stepping in front of Kael ***. His hands are shaking violently, his wooden stick trembling. "I will buy you time. Flee." "Flee where?" Kael *** scoffs, looking at the endless void surrounding his floating island. "Just stand your ground, trust me." The goblin vanguard closes the distance. 5 meters, 3 meters. One goblin lunges, its rusty blade swinging directly toward the zealot's neck. Kael *** doesn't flinch. He steps forward, grabbing the heavy stone base of the summoning altar, and with a surge of adrenaline, he violently pushes it over. The heavy stone slab crashes down directly onto the lunging goblin, crushing it instantly. Enemy defeated, plus 1 soul fragment. 1, Kael ** counts, his eyes wild. He grabs a sharp piece of rubble from the shattered altar. The goblins pause, confused by the sudden aggression. Kael ** doesn't wait. He charges the nearest one. He slams the jagged stone into its skull. It's brutal, messy, and desperate. Kael ** takes a glancing slash to his shoulder, wincing as blood stains his shirt, but he finishes it off. Enemy defeated, plus 1 soul fragment. 2, Kael ** shouts, but there are still 18 left. The goblins realize Kael * is a threat and swarm him. He's quickly overwhelmed. A goblin tackles him to the dirt, raising a jagged dagger to plunge into Kael **'s chest. Suddenly, a wooden stick smashes into the goblin's head. The zealot stands there, panting heavily. It barely does any damage, but it distracts the monster long enough for Kael ** to drive his stone shard upward. Enemy defeated, plus 1 soul fragment. It's a desperate, bloody brawl. 6 dead, 7 dead, 9 dead, but it's taking a toll. Kael ** is bleeding from a dozen shallow cuts. The zealot is on his knees, clutching a deep slash on his leg. The remaining 11 goblins encircle them, shrieking in cruel laughter. The leader, a slightly larger goblin with a rusted iron cleaver, steps forward to deliver the killing blow to the old man. Kael ** looks at his system prompt. Soul fragments, 1010. Divine ascension ready. Kael ** smiles, spitting a mouthful of blood onto the cracked earth. "Hey, old man," Kael ** whispers. The zealot looks up, his vision swimming. "Yes, my lord." "I told you I'd turn you into a god." Kael ** slams his hand onto the interface. System, trigger ascension. Time seems to stop. A shockwave of pure, unadulterated golden energy erupts from Kael **'s body, knocking the surrounding goblins back several feet. The sky, which was a blood-red canopy of despair, suddenly parts. A pillar of blinding, divine light crashes down from the heavens, striking the zealot directly. Inside the pillar of light, a silhouette is changing. The hunched, frail posture straightens out. The tattered potato sack dissolves into ash, replaced by the ringing sound of heavy armor. The wooden stick splinters and reforms, expanding into a massive, two-handed golden halberd radiating waves of scorching heat. Ascension complete. F-rank Wandering Zealot has evolved into S-rank Inquisitor of the Dawn. Note, due to the architect of the Pantheon trait, this unit's growth limit has been shattered. Potential, divine. Standing before Kael is no longer a frail old man. It is a 7-foot-tall behemoth of a warrior. Clad in blinding white and gold armor, a halo of pure, burning sunlight rotates slowly behind his head. The goblin leader, trembling uncontrollably, drops his rusty cleaver. The primal instinct of monsters is telling them to run. The Inquisitor of the Dawn opens his eyes. They are glowing pools of liquid gold. He looks at the fleeing goblins. He simply raises his massive golden halberd and strikes the butt of the weapon against the ground. Boom. A shockwave of solar fire erupts from the point of impact. It sweeps across the island in a split second. The moment the fire touches the fleeing goblins, they are instantly vaporized, turned into fine white ash. The entire battlefield goes dead silent. The Inquisitor of the Dawn turns around, his golden armor clanking softly. He walks over to Kael who is sitting in the dirt, staring in absolute awe at the nuke he just unleashed. The towering, radiant warrior drops to one knee, bowing his head respectfully. "My lord." The Inquisitor of the Dawn says, his voice now a booming, resonant baritone that vibrates with power. "The vermin have been cleansed." "What is your next command?" Kael looks at the ash drifting in the wind. He looks at his global chat, where thousands of lords are crying about barely surviving. Then he looks at his S-rank Inquisitor, whose potential is listed as divine. A massive, predatory grin spreads across Kael's face. "Oh, this trial is going to be fun." A single strike, that was all it took. The fine white ash of 20 feral goblins drifted through the starlit void. The only remaining evidence that an attack had even occurred on Kael's territory, standing in the center of the cracked earth, was the Inquisitor of the Dawn a towering, 7-foot-tall behemoth of a warrior, clad in immaculate white and gold armor. A halo of pure, burning sunlight rotating slowly behind his head. Kael still bleeding from a dozen shallow cuts. He'd taken while defending the frail old man just stared. A few minutes ago, he was fighting for his life. In the dirt with a jagged rock, now he possessed a weapon of mass destruction. A global system chime echoed across the void, shaking Kael from his shock. Wave 1 complete, calculating survival rates. Initial lords, 1 billion surviving lords, 412,504,119. Kael's blood ran cold. Over 500 million people had just died in the span of a few minutes. The global chat, which had been full of screaming and panic, was now eerily quiet, save for the traumatized survivors. Realizing the true horror of the Aegis trial, this wasn't a game, it was a cosmic culling. I survived," one user wrote, "but my elven rangers are both dead, my core is cracked. I have nothing left to defend myself for Wave 2. It was a massacre. The goblins didn't just attack the core. They tortured my units." While the rest of humanity was drowning in despair, Kael was looking at his S-rank Inquisitor, whose potential was listed as divine. He wasn't just going to survive this trial, he was going to conquer it. Flawless victory achieved, 0 core damage, distributing rewards. A golden chest materialized out of thin air and dropped at Kael's feet. "My lord," the Inquisitor boomed, his voice vibrating with absolute authority. "Shall I open this artifact to ensure it contains no traps?" "I've got it," Kael said, wiping the blood from his chin. He opened the chest. Inside were 3 items: a territory blueprint, a random summoning ticket, and a targeted aggression scroll. Kael tapped the scroll first. The description made his eyes narrow. Targeted aggression scroll allows a lord to redirect 100% of their incoming enemy wave to another specific lord's territory, usable only once. Kael *S tactical mind immediately saw the terrifying implication of this item. The Aegis trial wasn't just player vs environment. It was player versus player. If a strong lord wanted to eliminate competition, they could just dump their monsters onto someone else. System, Kael * commanded, use the territory blueprint. The ground shook. The cracked earth near the shattered summoning altar shifted and molded itself, rising upward until a small, elegant stone pavilion was formed. It had a white marble floor and a simple altar in the center. It wasn't a massive castle. But compared to the dirt they were standing on, it was a palace. The Inquisitor looked at the pavilion, then turned to Kael *, dropping to one knee. The sheer weight of his golden armor cracked the earth beneath him. "My lord," the Inquisitor said, bowing his head, "you have given me a new life. You have shattered my mortal coil and granted me a glimpse of the divine. My spear is yours. My life is yours. Tell me who to smite, and I shall turn their world to ash." Kael looked at the kneeling behemoth. "Stand up, Inquisitor. We have a lot of work to do and very little time before Wave 2. Kael * pulled out the second item from the chest, the random summoning ticket. Because Kael * had achieved a flawless victory, the system had rewarded him with a chance to expand his army. In the global chat, the lords who had survived with their A rank and S rank summons were already boasting again. Lord Malachar *, a user who had apparently pulled an S rank Shadow Drake, was currently spamming the chat. "Weaklings die. That's the rule of the Aegis trial. If you want protection, transfer your lord cores to my coordinates. I am building an empire and I need slaves to mine resources." Kael ignored the arrogant chatter. He walked up to his newly repaired summoning altar. If his first summon was an F-rank zealot, what would his second be? With his architect of the Pantheon cheat, it didn't matter what rank the unit was. Any trash tier unit could become a god. System summon. The altar flared with a dull, murky gray light. No blinding flash, no heavenly chorus. Just a sad, flickering gray glow. When the light faded, sitting on the altar was a young woman. She was dressed in filthy rags, hugging her knees to her chest, trembling violently. But the most striking detail was the dirty cloth wrapped tightly over her eyes. She was completely blind. "Congratulations, you have summoned an F-rank unit, Blind Beggar. Unit stats, Strength 0, Agility 1, Intelligence 3. Combat ability, none. Special skill, Prophecy, dormant." The Inquisitor, standing behind Kael * immediately gripped his golden halberd. "My lord, shall I dispose of this useless flesh?" The blind girl whimpered, curling into a tighter ball on the stone altar, waiting for the execution stroke. "Stand down, Inquisitor," Kael * said calmly. He walked up to the altar. The girl flinched. As Kael * knelt down to be at eye level with her. "What's your name?" Kael asked softly. "Ilara," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, I don't know where I am. It's so dark I can't fight." "I know you can't," Kael * said. He opened his system interface, checking the ascension requirements. Evolution requires 50 soul fragments. He currently had 0, having spent his first 10 on the Inquisitor. "You don't need to fight, Ilara *, Kael * said, standing up. "You just need to survive for a little while. Inquisitor, your new primary directive is to protect her. If a single drop of her blood hits the dirt, I will hold you personally responsible." The Inquisitor slammed a fist against his golden breastplate. "Your will is absolute, my lord. I shall become her shield. Time until Wave 2, 000500. Kael spent the next few minutes bandaging his own wounds. He expected another wave of maybe 50 goblins. With the Inquisitor on his side, Kael * assumed Wave 2 would be a walk in the park. He was wrong. The sky, which normally turned blood red before a wave, suddenly flashed a sickly, venomous purple. A massive siren wailed across Kael *'s territory, so loud it forced him to cover his ears. "Warning, anomaly detected. Lord Malachar has used a targeted aggression scroll against your territory. Warning, Lord Malachar has redirected his boss wave to your coordinates. Incoming boss, Hobgoblin Chieftain, level 15. Kael * *'s eyes went wide. That arrogant bastard from the global chat, Malachar *, had used his scroll. Instead of fighting his own boss wave, Malachar had randomly selected a nearby territory to dump his enemies on. 50 heavily armored hobgoblins, creatures twice the size of normal goblins wielding massive battle axes, and a level 15 boss. This was a wave designed to wipe out a small army. Kael had 2 units. "My lord," the Inquisitor said, stepping in front of Kael and the trembling Alara. The golden halo behind his head began to spin faster, radiating a blistering heat. The filth approaches. 3 massive portals tore open. The heavy, thudding sound of steel boots hitting dirt echoed across the void. Behind them, stepping out of the center portal, was the chieftain. It was a hulking, 12-foot-tall monster, wielding a rusted iron pillar as a club. "Kill Them," the chieftain roared, pointing at Kael Lord Kor. "Inquisitor," Kael said, his voice ice-cold, "do not let a single one of them leave." "With pleasure." The Inquisitor didn't wait for the enemy to charge. He bent his knees and launched himself directly into the center of the 50 armored hobgoblins like a golden missile. He crashed into the vanguard with the force of a meteor. 10 hobgoblins were instantly vaporized, their heavy steel armor melting like butter under the intense solar heat radiating from the Inquisitor's body. The remaining monsters roared in fury, swinging their massive battle axes at the Golden Knight. The weapons sparked against his armor, unable to even leave a scratch. The Inquisitor didn't dodge, he simply ignored them. He swung his massive 2-handed halberd in a wide arc. A crescent wave of pure, condensed sunlight erupted, slicing through 20 hobgoblins at the waist. They didn't bleed, the wounds were instantly cauterized. Kael watched in awe. His system interface was going crazy. +1 soul fragment, +1 soul fragment. The hobgoblin chieftain realizing its army was being systematically erased in seconds, let out a deafening roar. It charged the Inquisitor, raising its massive iron pillar high above its head, aiming to crush him. The Inquisitor didn't even look at the boss. He simply raised his left hand. A localized gravity well of solar energy formed in his palm. The chieftain's massive iron pillar slammed into the invisible barrier and instantly began to melt, molten slag dripping onto the monster's hands. The boss shrieked in agony. "You dare raise a weapon against the architect of the divine," the Inquisitor boomed. He gripped his halberd with both hands, the blade glowing white-hot. "Perish." He thrust the halberd forward, piercing the chieftain directly through its thick, armored chest. The golden blade didn't just stab the monster, it ignited the beast from the inside out. Beams of blinding light shot out of the chieftain's eyes before the massive monster exploded into a shower of white ash. Boss defeated, +50 soul fragments. Silence descended on the territory once more. 50 heavily armored elite monsters and a level 15 boss, annihilated in less than 60 seconds. Kael didn't even check the loot drops yet. He immediately opened his system interface. Soul fragments, 7850. He turned to the altar, where the blind beggar Ilara was curled up, weeping in sheer terror. "Ilara," Kael said, walking up to her. She flinched, shrinking back. Are we dead?" "They're gone," Kael said softly. He reached out and placed a hand on her trembling shoulder. "I told you that you didn't have to fight, but it's time to open your eyes." He tapped the system interface. "System, trigger ascension." Once again, time stood still. But this time, it wasn't a violent eruption of solar fire. A deep, resonant hum vibrated through the very fabric of space. The starlit void above them seemed to bend and warp, the stars stretching into long lines of light. That converged directly above Ilara. A pillar of cosmic, shimmering purple and silver energy cascaded down. Her filthy rags dissolved into stardust. The dirty cloth wrapped around her eyes disintegrated. In their place, elegant, flowing robes of midnight blue and silver wove themselves into existence, adorned with glowing runes. She rose into the air, floating inches above the stone altar, ascension complete. F-rank blind beggar has evolved into S-rank oracle of the cosmos, potential divine. The pillar of cosmic energy faded. She slowly opened her eyes. They were no longer blind, milky orbs. They were deep pools of swirling galaxies, infinite and terrifyingly beautiful. She looked at Kael ***, not just at him but through him, as if she were seeing his past, his present, and a million possible futures. She bowed elegantly, her voice no longer a trembling whisper, but a serene, echoing harmony. "My lord," the oracle said, "I see the threads of fate, they all bend to your will." Kael *** smirked. "Good, because right now I need you to find a specific thread." Kael opened his global chat interface. Lord Malachar * was currently bragging about surviving Wave 2. Mocking whoever was unlucky enough to receive his boss Wave, Malachar * thought he was untouchable. "Ilara," Kael * said, not taking his eyes off the chat. "There's a lord named Malachar, find his coordinates." The oracle closed her starry eyes. A glowing, intricate map of the entire Aegis trial projected out of her mind. Billions of floating islands. In less than a second, she pinpointed a specific, massive territory heavily fortified by black dragons. "Coordinates locked, my lord," she said serenely. Kael typed a single message into the global chat. Ensuring it cost him premium resources, so it would be highlighted in red for all 400 million surviving lords to see. "Lord Kael, Lord Malachar, thanks for the boss EXP. I'm coming to return the favor." The chat instantly exploded. Kael ** had just declared the very first PvP war in the Aegis trial. And with an inquisitor who could vaporize armies and an oracle who could see the future. Malachar had no idea the kind of hell that was about to rain down on his territory. "Lord Malachar, thanks for the boss EXP. I'm coming to return the favor." The moment Kael ***'s highlighted red text hit the global chat, the entire Aegis trial paused. Over 400 million surviving lords stopped whatever they were doing, up until this point. Everyone was just desperately trying to survive their own waves, the idea of actively hunting down another lord. It was unprecedented, it was suicidal. "Is this guy crazy?" one lord typed. Malachar pulled an S-rank Shadow Drake on his first summon. He's been bragging about having over 1,000 orcs. Defending his core, who is Kael? Does he have a death wish? Malachar just used a targeted aggression scroll to skip Wave 2, if Kael attacks him. He's walking into a fully rested S-rank army, in his own massive territory. A sprawling, jagged fortress built on a mountain of black stone. Lord *** Malachar laughed out loud. He lounged on a throne made of bone, looking down at his army of heavily armored orcs. And the three massive, terrifying shadow drakes circling his lord core. He opened the chat and typed his reply, "Come and try, Kael, I need more skulls for my throne." Before we watch Kael absolutely obliterate the smug look off Malachar's face, I have a quick question for you. Are you enjoying this original, overpowered evolution story? If you are, do me a massive favor. And smash that like button, subscribe to Fate Library and drop a comment down below. Telling me what kind of god you would want to summon. It helps the channel out tremendously. Now let's get back to the slaughter, back on his small, elegant stone pavilion. Kael didn't look like a man walking to his death. He looked like a chess grandmaster, who already knew it was checkmate in 3 moves. "Ilara," Kael ** said. Turning to the Oracle of the Cosmos, "Tell me about his defenses." Oracle of the Cosmos * floated gracefully a few inches off the marble floor, her deep, galaxy-filled eyes staring into the void. She wasn't just looking at Malachar's territory. She was seeing the fundamental threads of probability surrounding it. "His fortress is heavily fortified, my lord," the oracle's serene voice echoed. "He possesses exactly 1,012 orc berserkers. 3 S-rank shadow drakes patrol the airspace above his core. Furthermore, the bridge leading to his central courtyard is rigged with 30 hidden explosive rune traps." The Inquisitor tightened his grip on his golden halberd. "Cowardly tactics, I shall sweep the bridge clear." "With a single strike, my lord." "Hold on," Kael ** smirked. "Ilara, if we step onto that bridge, what is the probability that the traps detonate prematurely and blow up his own orc vanguard?" Oracle of the Cosmos * smiled, a subtle, ethereal expression. She reached out a delicate, glowing finger and seemed to pluck an invisible string in the air. Previously it was 0%. Now it is absolute certainty. Perfect, Kael *** said. He opened his system interface. He had looted a specific high-tier consumable from the hobgoblin boss. That Malachar had so generously sent him. Consumable item, Void Bridge Constructor. Effect creates a temporary physical bridge between your territory and a target coordinate. Duration, 30 minutes. System, Kael * commanded. Target coordinates locked by the Oracle. Construct the Void Bridge. The void between the floating islands violently ripped apart, in Malachar's territory. The arrogant lord was still laughing, watching the global chat, when a thunderous crack echoed across his fortress. A massive bridge made of shimmering, condensed starlight slammed into the edge of his island, connecting his fortress directly to Kael**''s small pavilion in the distance. Malachar bolted up from his bone throne. He actually did it. The madman actually built a bridge. Malachar turned to his army. Archers, mages line up at the choke point, drakes take to the sky. The second he steps off that bridge, turn him into ash, the orc army roared. Banging their weapons against their shields, the three massive shadow drakes took flight. Their dark, corrosive breath dripping onto the stone below, they all stared down the narrow bridge, waiting for Kael**''s massive army to charge across, but there was no army. Through the shimmering light of the void bridge, only two figures emerged. Walking calmly in front was Kael***, his hands casually tucked into his pockets. Walking one step behind him was the Inquisitor of the Dawn ***, his golden armor blindingly bright. Against the dark abyss, the solar halo behind his head radiating waves of oppressive, blistering heat. Ilera had stayed behind to guard Kael***'s core and to pull the strings of fate from afar. Malachar * squinted. 2 people, he brought 1 unit. Are you kidding me? Killed THEM. Archers loose, an orc commander bellowed. A black cloud of 500 arrows blackened the sky, raining down directly on Kael** and the Inquisitor. Kael didn't even break his stride. He didn't raise his arms to block. Back at the pavilion, Ilera gently plucked another invisible string. A sudden freak gust of violent wind howled through the void. It caught the massive volley of arrows midair, reversing their trajectory perfectly, and sent them hurtling right back into the orc archers. Screams of agony erupted as the orcs were pinned to the ground by their own weapons. Malachar**''s jaw dropped. What was that? Wind magic, drakes, burn them. The 3 S-rank shadow drakes swooped down, opening their massive jaws to unleash a torrent of corrosive black fire. Inquisitor, Kael** said calmly, continuing his casual walk. The sky is a bit crowded. At once, my lord, the Inquisitor didn't just swing his halberd, he planted his boots into the starlight bridge and launched himself into the air like a surface-to-air missile. He collided with the lead shadow drake mid-flight. The dragon, an apex predator of the Aegis trial, didn't even get a chance to roar. The Inquisitor grabbed the beast by its upper and lower jaws, and with a terrifying display of raw, godlike strength, ripped the dragon's head completely in half. The remaining 2 drakes shrieked in terror, trying to pull up, but the Inquisitor was already moving. He spun in the air, hurling his golden halberd. The weapon transformed into a streak of pure, condensed sunlight, piercing cleanly through the chests of both fleeing dragons. They turned to ash before their bodies even hit the ground. Malachar fell backward over his throne. 3 S-rank summons, dead in exactly 4 seconds. Attack, all of you, charge! Malachar screamed, his voice cracking with panic. The remaining 800 orc berserkers charged the bridge, but as they sprinted across the central courtyard, the area rigged with Malachar***'s explosive traps, Ilera***'s probability manipulation took effect. Boom, boom, boom. The hidden runes detonated simultaneously, not under Kael***'s feet, but directly under the boots of the charging orcs. A massive chain reaction of explosions ripped the vanguard to shreds. Orcs were sent flying into the void, screaming as Malachar***'s own defensive perimeter wiped out 80% of his army. Kael** stepped off the void bridge and onto Malachar's black stone territory. The few surviving orcs dropped their weapons. and fled to the edges of the island, completely broken. The Inquisitor landed heavily beside Kael*. His halberd returning to his hand in a flash of light. He didn't have a single scratch on his armor. Malachor** was backed against his Lord Core, trembling uncontrollably. His arrogance was gone, replaced by the pathetic whimpering of a cornered rat. "Wait, wait," Malachor begged, throwing his hands up as Kael approached. "Let's make a deal. You can have half my resources. I'll be your vassal." "I'll do whatever you want." Kael stopped a few feet away, looking down at the shivering lord. "You spam the global chat for an hour talking about how the weak deserve to die." Kael** said, his voice devoid of pity. "I'm just agreeing with you." Kael didn't even draw a weapon. He simply walked past Malachor and placed his hand on the massive, glowing crystal. "No, please," Kael** pushed. The crystal shattered into a million glittering pieces. The moment the core broke, Malachor**'s body instantly dissolved into pixels, deleted from the Aegis trial forever. Target Lord eliminated, territory conquered, absorbing enemy resources. A massive influx of system notifications flooded Kael**'s vision. Absorbing an A-rank Lord's territory was a goldmine. He received thousands of units of stone, iron, and magic crystals. But more importantly, the deaths of the orcs and the 3 S-rank drakes flooded his system with soul fragments. Soul fragments, 500 milestone reached. Unique trait architect of the Pantheon has leveled up. New structure unlocked, the Pantheon Temple. Kael**'s eyes widened. The Pantheon Temple. He read the description. The temple didn't just allow him to summon more units, it acted as a catalyst. Any unit stationed inside the temple would passively generate faith, allowing Kael** to unlock divine artifacts, permanent buffs, and even resurrect his gods if they ever somehow fell in battle. He had just turned his fragile survival run into an unstoppable empire. Kael* and the Inquisitor walked back across the void bridge just as the 30-minute timer expired, leaving the ruined, empty remains of Malachor's island to crumble into the abyss. When he returned to his pavilion, Kalara** was waiting, bowing respectfully. "A flawless victory, my lord," she said softly. "Thanks to you, Alara*", Kael replied. He opened the global chat. The entire server was dead silent. Kael didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Every single lord in the Aegis trial had just received the system notification that Malachor, one of the strongest players on the board, had been annihilated. Kael** was no longer just a lord. He was a tyrant. But Kael**'s victory lap was cut terrifyingly short. The starlit void above his territory didn't turn blood red or sickly purple. It turned pitch, suffocating black. The global system alarm didn't chime. It roared like a dying beast. "Attention all LORDs. Wave 3 commencing. Wave type server-wide calamity. Survival probability 1.2%. Kael**'s confident smirk vanished. A calamity wave. It wasn't just monsters. The system itself was trying to purge the remaining players. Kael* had the Inquisitor of the Dawn and the Oracle of the Cosmos, but against a server-wide wipe mechanic. Even 2 gods might not be enough. He had 1 summoning ticket left from Malachor's loot. He needed his 3rd god, and he needed it now. What will Kael* summon from the altar? And how will his tiny territory survive a calamity designed to kill hundreds of millions of lords at once? Find out in the next part. The starlit void of the Aegis trial was gone. It had been replaced by a suffocating, pitch-black abyss. There were no twinkling stars, no ambient light from the portals. It was a darkness so absolute it felt heavy on the skin. Kael stood on his island, the adrenaline from executing Lord Malachor still pumping through his veins. But his eyes were locked on the glaring red system prompt floating in the air. "Attention all LORDs. Wave 3 commencing. Wave type server-wide calamity. Calamity designation, the abyssal tide. Survival probability 1.2%. The global chat, which had been dead silent after Kael**'s brutal PvP victory, exploded into absolute, unfiltered terror. "A calamity wave, on wave 3, are you insane? What is an abyssal tide? My archers can't shoot water. 1.2% survival. That means out of the 400 million of us left, almost everyone is going to die right now. God help us. Kael*'s mind raced. He had Asterisk, the Inquisitor of the Dawn ***, a warrior capable of vaporizing armies. He had Oracle of the Cosmos ***, a seer capable of manipulating probability. But you couldn't stab a tsunami, and you couldn't manipulate the probability of a natural disaster. That covered the entire universe. Ilera, Kael snapped, what is the abyssal tide? Oracle of the Cosmos * floated slightly higher, her galaxy-filled eyes narrowing as she peered into the dark void. For the first time since her ascension, a flicker of genuine concern crossed her serene face. It is not water, my lord, she said, her voice echoing with a haunting melody. It is a tidal wave of pure dark matter. It erodes physical forms on contact. Swords cannot cut it. Magic will be swallowed by it. It is an environmental purge. How long until impact? Kael asked. 60 seconds. Kael didn't hesitate. He pulled out the random summoning ticket he had looted from Malakar's territory. He needed a defense, and he needed it 5 seconds ago. He sprinted to the summoning altar. Slamming the ticket onto the stone, system summon. The altar glowed with that familiar, dull, depressing gray light. No heavenly fanfare. Just the pathetic fizzle of a low-tier summon. When the smoke cleared, sitting on the altar was a young boy. He couldn't have been older than 12. He was covered in soot, wearing a torn blacksmith's apron. But the most jarring detail was his right arm, or rather, the lack of it. His right sleeve was pinned up, and in his left hand he clutched a rusted, chipped trowel. Congratulations, you have summoned an F-rank unit, maimed apprentice. Unit stats, strength 0, agility 1, intelligence 2. Combat ability, none, special skill, mud wall. The boy looked around, terrified. He dropped the trowel, falling backward onto the stone. Please, I don't know how to fight. I'm just a builder. Kael looked up at the sky. A deafening, roaring sound began to build in the distance. It sounded like a hurricane tearing through a canyon. The abyssal tide was coming. Kael looked at his system interface. He had exactly 500 soul fragments banked. From slaughtering Malakar's massive orc army and his 3 shadow drakes. To evolve the maimed apprentice, it required exactly 100 soul fragments. You aren't here to fight, kid, Kael** said, his voice calm despite the roaring void above them. You're here to build. Kael* slammed his hand onto the interface. System trigger ascension. For the 3rd time, the universe seemed to hold its breath. But this ascension was different. The golden fire of the Inquisitor had been wrathful. The cosmic energy of the Oracle had been elegant. This energy was heavy, it was foundational. A massive pillar of deep, emerald green and earthy brown light erupted from the core of the floating island, shooting upward and engulfing the terrified boy on the altar. The very bedrock of Kael**'s territory groaned. The floating island violently shook, expanding outward. Inside the pillar, the boy's frail silhouette began to grow. 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet tall. The rusted trowel dissolved, morphing into a colossal, tower-sized shield made of living diamond and runic steel. The boy's missing arm was replaced by a massive, gauntlet-clad limb made of pure, unbreakable bedrock. Ascension complete. F-rank maimed apprentice has evolved into S-rank Titan of the Bastion. Note, due to the architect of the Pantheon trait, this unit's growth limit has been shattered. Current level 1, potential divine. The pillar shattered, sending shockwaves of heavy, gravity-altering force. Across the island, standing before Kael** was a living mountain. Titan of the Bastion * was a 30-foot-tall golem-like deity, clad in armor made of the Earth's core. His eyes glowed with a deep, ancient green light. He didn't speak with a voice. He spoke with the rumbling of an earthquake. I am the shield that guards the Pantheon, my lord. The voice resonated directly in Kael**''s chest. Then guard us, Kael** ordered, pointing up at the void. Above them, the pitch-black void suddenly rushed downward. It wasn't a wave of water. It was a sheer wall of dark matter, obliterating everything it touched. In the global chat, the death notifications were moving so fast the text blurred into a solid white line. Millions of lords were being vaporized per second. S-rank dragons were dissolved into nothingness. Massive castles were swept away like sandcastles in a hurricane. The abyssal tide crashed down toward Kael***'s island. Titan of the Bastion * didn't flinch. He stepped forward, placing himself between Kael***, the Oracle, the Inquisitor, and the incoming doom. The Titan raised his skyscraper-sized diamond shield and slammed the bottom edge of it violently into the bedrock. Skill activated, Aegis of the World Tree. A massive, translucent dome of pure, emerald geoenergy erupted from the shield, expanding outward until it covered the entire island in an unbreakable bubble. A second later, the abyssal tide hit. The impact was deafening. Kael** was thrown to his knees, his hands covering his ears. The entire floating island was pushed downward by millions of tons of force, dropping several hundred feet into the void. The dark matter washed over the emerald dome, swirling furiously, trying to eat through the geoenergy. Titan of the Bastion groaned, his massive bedrock legs sinking deep into the stone of the island. As he held the shield up, bearing the weight of a cosmic ocean, cracks began to form on the surface. "He's taking too much pressure," Kael* shouted over the roar of the tide. "Allow me, my lord," Oracle of the Cosmos * said. She floated upward, her galaxy eyes spinning. She reached out and plucked the strings of probability surrounding the Titan's shield. Probability of structural failure reduced to 0. Instantly, the cracks on the diamond shield glowed silver and repaired themselves. "And my turn," the Inquisitor of the Dawn * boomed. He stepped behind the Titan, raising his golden halberd. He channeled a massive beam of solar energy directly into the Titan's back, feeding the giant with infinite, burning stamina. For 10 agonizing minutes, the calamity raged. The dark matter tore through the universe, wiping the Aegis trial completely clean, and then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the roaring stopped. The dark matter receded, evaporating back into the starry void. The heavy, suffocating pressure lifted. Titan of the Bastion * slowly lowered his massive shield, turning to Kael and offering a deep, rumbling bow that shook the ground. Kael stood up, brushing the dirt off his knees. He immediately checked the system. Wave 3 complete, calculating survival rates. Initial lords, 1 billion. Surviving lords, 4,012,000. Kael exhaled slowly. 4 million left out of 1 billion. In just 3 waves, 99.6% of humanity had been erased. But Kael* wasn't just surviving. He was thriving. His island was completely untouched. And more importantly, he still had 400 soul fragments left over from the Malachar invasion. "System," Kael* said, his voice ringing out in the quiet void. "Access the territory blueprint menu. Use all remaining resources looted from Lord Malachar and construct the Pantheon temple." The system hummed. The massive amount of stone, iron, and magic crystals Kael had stolen from Malachar's territory flew out of his inventory. The center of Kael***'s island, right behind his Lord Core, began to transform. Massive, towering pillars of white marble shot up from the earth. A grand, sweeping staircase formed, leading up to a breathtaking, open-air temple that looked like it belonged on Mount Olympus. Golden statues of the Inquisitor, the Oracle, and the Titan began to carve themselves into the facade. Pantheon temple constructed. Effect: all units stationed within the temple passively generate faith. Faith can be used to unlock divine artifacts, permanent territory buffs, or resurrect fallen deities. Kael walked up the marble steps, his 3 gods flanking him. He stood in the center of the temple, looking out over the void. He had a spear that could pierce the heavens, a seer who could rewrite fate, and a shield that could block a cosmic disaster. Suddenly, a pedestal in the center of the temple began to glow. Faith generation active. First milestone reached. Generating divine artifact tailored for the Lord. A weapon materialized on the pedestal. It wasn't for his units. It was for Kael***. Before Kael could even examine the weapon, a massive, server-wide announcement blared across the sky. Completely overriding the global chat, Attention all surviving LORDS. The Lord ranking board is now open. Rank 1 Lord Kael, score SSS+. Bounty system activated. Eliminating the rank 1 Lord will grant the killer a guaranteed mythic tier summon. Kael ***************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** In Sector 1, an SS-rank lord with an army of angels had just seen Kael***'s name on the board, and the hunt was on. Kael* had defended against monsters, and he had killed a saboteur. But how would he defend against a coordinated alliance of the strongest human lords in existence? And what exactly was the divine weapon the temple just forged for him? Find out in the next part. The Pantheon temple gleamed with an ethereal, blinding white light at the center of the grand marble structure. Hovering above an intricately carved pedestal was *Kael***'s reward for surviving the calamity wave. It wasn't a sword, it wasn't a magical staff, it was a gun. More specifically, it was a massive, ornate hand cannon forged from what looked like dark starlight and gold. Kael walked up the marble steps, his boots echoing in the silent temple, and grasped the grip. The weapon was heavy, humming with a terrifying, contained energy. Divine artifact acquired, the Sovereign's Gaze. Weapon type, Faith Catalyst firearm. Description: this weapon does not require ammunition. It fires condensed faith generated by the Pantheon temple. Its damage scales infinitely based on the power and devotion of your ascended units. Current passive damage output, continental. Kael spun the cylinder of the massive hand cannon, a cold, predatory smile spreading across his face. He didn't just have an army of gods to fight for him anymore. If someone managed to slip past his defenses, he now possessed the firepower to vaporize a mountain with a pull of a trigger. And he was going to need it, because the global chat was currently having a meltdown over the massive bounty the system had just placed on his head. On the other side of the Aegis trial, in Sector 1, Lord Valerius was currently looking at the Lord-ranking board. With absolute disgust, Lord Valerius was supposed to be the undisputed king of this death game. He had been born into a wealthy, militaristic family back on Earth, and his luck in the trial had been astronomical. His first summon was an S-rank high elf commander. Through ruthless conquest, he had amassed an army of 10,000 elite elven knights and a squadron of 6 celestial archangels. But he was ranked number 2. Rank number 1 belonged to Kael***, and whoever killed Kael would receive a guaranteed mythic tier summon. I don't care how he survived the calamity wave, Lord Valerius spat, pacing back and forth. On the balcony of his massive crystal castle, he probably found a glitch or a shield artifact. But he is one man and his territory is tiny. I want that mythic summon. Lord Valerius didn't act alone. He used his immense resources to form the Vanguard Alliance. Within 10 minutes, 50 of the top 100 ranked lords in the Aegis trial had agreed to join forces. They pooled their resources and purchased a singular, hyper-expensive item from the system shop, the Realm Fracture Scroll. Back on his territory, Kael* was currently inspecting the architectural details of his new temple. When the void above his island shattered like glass, no warning, no countdown. A massive, swirling vortex of blue energy swallowed Kael**''s entire floating island. When the light faded, Kael* realized he was no longer alone in the dark abyss. His tiny, single-island territory had been forcibly teleported into the dead center of Sector 1. Surrounding his island in a perfect, inescapable 360-degree ring were 50 massive floating fortresses. Millions of heavily armored troops, high elves, wyvern riders, golems, and mages, stood on the edges of their respective islands, all pointing their weapons directly at Kael***'s Lord Core. Hovering directly above Kael***'s island, flapping their massive, glowing white wings, were 6 archangels led by Lord Valerius on a flying golden chariot. Lord Kael****. Lord Valerius***'s voice boomed across the void, amplified by magic. I am Lord Valerius, leader of the Vanguard Alliance. You are completely surrounded by 2 million elite troops. Surrender your core peacefully, and we will make your death quick. Resist. And my archangels will burn your soul for eternity. Kael stood on the steps of the Pantheon temple, looking up at the armada. He didn't look scared, he looked annoyed. Ilara, Kael sighed. Not even bothering to yell back at Valerius. What are we looking at? Oracle of the Cosmos floated down from the temple pillars, her galaxy eyes scanning the 2 million troops surrounding them. 50 lords, my lord, she said serenely. 2,104,000 troops. Mostly fodder, 6 mid-tier celestial beings. Can the Titan hold the shield against that many? There is no need for a shield, my lord, Oracle of the Cosmos smiled, plucking a string of fate. They will all perish in exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Kael raised an eyebrow. 4 minutes, let's speed that up. Kael raised his right hand, pointing the massive barrel of the sovereign's gaze. Directly at one of the floating fortresses in the Vanguard Alliance ring. The fortress belonged to a lord who is currently ordering a squadron of 50 Wyvern riders to dive-bomb Kael island. Kael pulled the trigger. There was no gunshot sound. Instead, the universe itself seemed to mute. A beam of blinding, condensed white faith erupted from the barrel. Of the hand cannon, it didn't just shoot a projectile, it instantly erased the space between Kael and the target. The beam struck the enemy fortress. In a fraction of a second, the 50 Wyvern riders. The fortress walls, the Lord core, and the Lord himself were instantly vaporized into atomic dust. The beam punched clean through the island, shattering the bedrock and sending the remnants tumbling into the void. One shot, a top 100 lord and his entire army deleted. The remaining 49 lords of the Alliance froze in absolute, mind-numbing horror. Lord Valerius jaw hit the floor of his golden chariot. What? What was that? Attack, all of you, attack HIM now. Inquisitor, Kael said calmly, blowing the non-existent smoke from the barrel of his gun. Those things in the sky are calling themselves angels. It offends me. The Inquisitor of the Dawn stepped out of the temple. His golden armor burned with the heat of a supernova. He looked up at Valerius's 6 archangels, and a sound resembling a scoff vibrated from his helm. False idols, the Inquisitor of the Dawn boomed. I shall clip their wings. The Inquisitor of the Dawn launched himself into the sky, leaving a trail of solar fire. The 6 archangels charged him, wielding flaming swords. The Inquisitor didn't even use his halberd. He grabbed the first archangel by the throat, his gauntlet burning so hot it melted the Celestial's armor instantly. With a sickening RIP, the Inquisitor tore the archangel's glowing white wings clean off its back, tossing the screaming entity into the void, down on the ground. The remaining 49 lords were desperately using void bridge constructors to connect their islands to Kael sending thousands of troops charging across the starlight bridges to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. Titan, Kael ordered, clear the lawn. Titan of the Bastion didn't raise his defensive dome. Instead, the 30-foot-tall behemoth stomped his massive bedrock leg into the edge of Kael island. A localized, directional earthquake erupted outward. Seismic shockwaves of green geoenergy violently shattered the void bridges. Thousands of heavily armored elves and golems screamed as the bridges dissolved beneath their feet, sending them plummeting into the endless abyss. Kael checked his system interface. He was currently generating thousands of soul fragments per second as the Inquisitor and the Titan massacred the Vanguard Alliance. He had previously purchased one final random summoning ticket from the system shop using his banked resources. Let's end this, Kael muttered. He walked to the summoning altar and slapped the ticket down. System summon. The altar flashed with that depressing F-rank gray light. When the smoke cleared, sitting on the altar was a young girl, perhaps 16 years old. She was deathly pale, coughing weakly, and wearing a torn, faded ball gown. In her frail, trembling hands, she held a broken wooden violin. Congratulations, you have summoned an F-rank unit, deaf musician. Unit stats, Strength 0, Agility 1, Intelligence 4. Combat ability, none. Special skill, play. The girl looked around frantically, but her eyes didn't focus on anything. She couldn't hear the deafening sounds of the war raging above her. She just clutched her broken violin, terrified of the vibrations shaking the altar. Kael didn't even blink. He had over 10,000 soul fragments banked from the ongoing slaughter. System, Kael commanded, trigger ascension. A pillar of deep, blood-red and silver energy crashed down from the heavens, swallowing the deaf girl. The air pressure in the entire sector suddenly dropped. A haunting, beautiful, and utterly terrifying melody began to echo through the void, drowning out the screams of the dying alliance. Inside the pillar of light, the torn ballgun wove itself into an elegant, sweeping dress of liquid shadow and crimson silk. The broken wooden violin morphed into an instrument made of polished obsidian, strung with glowing, silver threads of starlight. The girl's posture straightened, her pale skin taking on an ethereal, immortal glow. Ascension complete. F-rank deaf musician has evolved into S-rank maestro of the Requiem. Note, due to the architect of the Pantheon trait, this unit's growth limit has been shattered. Current level, 1, potential, divine. The pillar faded. The maestro floated inches above the altar. She was no longer deaf. She could hear the symphony of the universe. She placed the obsidian violin under her chin and raised the starlight bow. "My lord," her voice echoed telepathically in Kael***'s mind, a sound like glass chiming in the wind. "The audience is being too loud. Shall I put them to sleep?" "Play them a lullaby," Kael smiled. The maestro closed her eyes and dragged the bow across the silver strings. She played a single, haunting note. The sound wave wasn't just noise. It was a physical crimson ripple that expanded outward from Kael***'s island at the speed of sound. It washed over the 50 floating fortresses and the remaining 1 million troops of the Vanguard Alliance. It didn't cause explosions, it didn't burn them. Skill activated, the Reaper's Lullaby. Effect: instant death to all hostile entities under level 50 within a 10-mile radius. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. The moment the crimson sound wave touched an enemy soldier, their eyes rolled back in their head. And they dropped dead to the floor. No blood, no screams, just millions of hearts stopping at the exact same millisecond. Entire legions of elven knights collapsed in perfect formation. Wyverns fell out of the sky like stones. The remaining lords on their islands choked on their own breath and slumped over their command tables. Their lord cores turning gray and shattering simultaneously. In a single note, the maestro of the Requiem had executed over 1 million troops and 48 lords. High above the graveyard, Lord Valerius *** sat trembling in his golden chariot. He was over level 50, so he had survived the note, but his entire army was dead. His 6 archangels had been ripped apart by the Inquisitor. His 50-man alliance had been wiped off the map. In less than 5 minutes, Lord Valerius * didn't even try to fight. He pulled out a realm fracture scroll. His hands shaking violently and tore it in half, teleporting his chariot as far away from Kael as the system would allow. Kael * watched him flee, lowering the sovereign's gaze. He didn't care that Valerius escaped. The message had been sent. The global chat was completely paralyzed. Kael**''s score on the ranking board hadn't just solidified his #1 spot. It had broken the UI, but Kael***'s moment of triumph was interrupted by a new golden system prompt. That flooded the sky, not just for his sector but for the entire Aegis trial. The tutorial phase is now over. Sector barriers are falling. Initiating the realm wars. Prepare for cross-server invasions. Kael** smirked, resting the barrel of his massive hand cannon on his shoulder. The tutorial was over. The real war was just beginning. The Aegis trial was never just one server. When the golden text faded from the sky, the very fabric of the void began to tear. Massive, jagged rifts in space ripped open across Sector 1, revealing a completely different universe. On the other side, this was Sector 0, the Alpha server. The lords in Sector 0 hadn't just survived for a few days like Kael* and the others. They had been fighting their trial for an entire year. Time moved differently in the Alpha server. The lords there weren't just survivors. They were conquerors, emperors, and tyrants with armies, numbering in the tens of millions, and they were hungry for new territory. The moment the server merge completed, a colossal floating continent drifted out of the largest spatial rift. It wasn't an island. It was a country-sized landmass entirely encased in black steel, floating on thrusters powered by enslaved dragons. At the helm of this flying continent was Emperor Kael ***, the undisputed rank 1 lord of the Alpha server. Emperor Kael ** was a terrifying reflection of what Kael could become. He possessed an army of 50 million undead soldiers, 5,000 S-rank generals, and a dozen mythic-tier beasts. But what caught Emperor Kael ***, wasn't the newly opened resources of Sector 1. It was the Lord ranking board. New sector discovered, updating cross-server rankings. Cross-server rank 1, Lord Kael ***. Score, SSS plus cross-server rank 2, Emperor Kael ***. Score, SSS. Emperor Kael ***, a man who had slaughtered billions to conquer his server, stared at the board in pure rage. He had been usurped by a rookie who had been in the trial for less than 48 hours. Find this Lord Kael ***. The Emperor commanded his generals, his voice echoing across his steel continent. I want his core shattered, I want his territory burned, and I want his head on a spike. On Kael ***'s island, the Pantheon temple was pulsing with a blinding, golden light. The faith generated by his 4 gods was overflowing. My lord, Oracle of the Cosmos *** said, her galaxy eyes swirling furiously. A massive temporal distortion is approaching. It is an armada unlike anything this sector has ever seen. The probability of conventional victory is incalculable. They're coming for the bounty, Kael ** said calmly, resting the sovereign's gaze on his shoulder. And the ranking, let them come. The void above them darkened. Emperor Kael hadn't bothered sending scouts. He had used a Grand Realm teleport to drop his entire steel continent directly above Kael ***'s tiny, elegant island. It was like a literal moon eclipsing a speck of dust. Millions of undead soldiers began to rain down from the sky, dropping off the edges of the steel continent like a waterfall of rotting flesh and rusted blades. Dozens of massive, mythic-tier bone dragons circled the perimeter, cutting off any chance of escape. Surrender, anomaly, Emperor Kael ***'s voice projected across the void. You have played a good game, but you are a child playing with wooden swords, and I am the apocalypse. Kael didn't answer the Emperor. He turned to his 4 ascended units. The Inquisitor of the Dawn ***, Oracle of the Cosmos ***, Titan of the Bastion ***, and Maestro of the Requiem ***. System, Kael ** commanded. Activate the Pantheon Temple's ultimate ability, Divine Manifestation. Acknowledged, consuming all banked faith, initiating Divine Manifestation. The temple didn't just glow, it erupted. A shockwave of pure, divine energy blasted outward, instantly vaporizing the first 100,000 undead soldiers that had landed on the island. The 4 gods didn't just power up, they merged their authorities. Titan of the Bastion * slammed his skyscraper-sized diamond shield into the ground, but he didn't just create a dome. The bedrock of Kael ***'s island expanded exponentially, growing from a tiny floating rock into a massive, unbreakable golden arena that caught the millions of falling undead. Maestro of the Requiem floated to the highest pillar of the temple. She drew her starlight bow across her obsidian violin. But this time she didn't play a single note of death. She played a furious, high-tempo battle symphony. The music acted as a universal buff, increasing the speed and power of Kael ***'s forces by 1,000%, while causing the undead army to crumble under the sheer acoustic pressure. The Inquisitor of the Dawn *** didn't stay on the ground, empowered by the Maestro's symphony. He shot into the sky like a golden comet, directly intercepting the dozen mythic-tier bone dragons. He didn't swing his halberd. He simply spread his arms, and a literal miniature sun ignited in his chest. The solar flare washed over the dragons, burning their indestructible bones into fine, white ash. Before they could even breathe their cursed fire, Emperor Kael watched from his steel balcony in absolute shock. His army of millions was being decimated by 4 units. "Impossible," he snarled. He drew a massive, cursed greatsword and leaped off his balcony, diving directly toward Kael like a dark meteor. "Ilera," Kael said quietly, looking up at the falling emperor. Oracle of the Cosmos smiled. "Probability of a critical hit locked at 100%, my lord, across all timelines." Kael raised the sovereign's gaze. The massive hand cannon glowed with a blinding, condensed white light. It was feeding on the immense faith being generated by the divine manifestation of his 4 gods. Emperor Kael raised his cursed greatsword, a dark aura wrapping around his body, ready to cleave Kael and his island in half. Kael pulled the trigger. The recoil didn't push Kael back. It pushed the entire golden island down a few inches. The beam of pure faith that erupted from the barrel was so bright it turned the pitch-black void into a blinding day. The beam struck Emperor Kael midair. His mythic tier armor, his cursed greatsword, his dark aura. None of it mattered. The condensed faith didn't just pierce him, it erased the very concept of his existence. The beam continued upward, striking the center of the massive steel continent. The impact triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. The continent shattered, exploding in a silent, cosmic shockwave. That wiped out the remaining millions of undead troops instantly. Kael stood completely still, the barrel of the hand cannon smoking. The golden system interface flickered, then turned a deep royal purple. A new, unprecedented notification appeared for every single surviving lord across all merged servers. Cross-server rank 1 lord eliminated, updating. Lord Kael has successfully conquered the alpha server. The Aegis trial is officially over. The void began to dissolve. The floating islands, the portals, the monsters, they all faded away, replaced by a massive, endless realm of pristine, untouched land. Distributing final reward to the victor. Lord Kael has been granted administrative authority over the new realm. "You are no longer a lord, you are the God King." Kael looked out over the vast, beautiful new world. Behind him, the Pantheon temple materialized into the physical realm, and his 4 gods. The Inquisitor of the Dawn Oracle of the Cosmos Titan of the Bastion and Maestro of the Requiem knelt before him in absolute reverence. He had started with a frail old man in a potato sack, surrounded by dirt and death. Now he owned the universe. Kael smiled, twirling the sovereign's gaze before holstering it. "Well," Kael said to his gods, "let's get to work." And that is where our story ends. Kael conquered the brutal Aegis trial. Not by relying on a massive army of fodder, but by forging a pantheon of literal gods. If you loved this insanely overpowered evolution story and want to see more epic original manhwa recaps, do me a massive favor. Click on the video on your screen right now to check out some of the previous incredible stories we've covered here on the channel. Thank you so much for watching Fate Library. Hit that subscribe button, keep reading, and I will see you in the next one.